Hi guys, a quick disclaimer before we start today's show. We're going to talk today about the worlds of wellness and mental health, but it's worth mentioning that this podcast shouldn't be used in place of the support and care of an appropriately qualified health professional. On with the show.
Hi, Jenny here. Welcome to A Spoonful of Theory, our monthly podcast looking at the facts, theories and stories from the world of wellness and mental wealth. Mental wealth, lots of mental wealth.
Kind of works.
Mental health. As ever, Ben is here.
Hi.
And I'm here, hello. And I'm very excited because this month we're joined by Jutika Healy all the way from Ireland. Hello, Jutika.
Hello.
Hello.
Lovely to see you both.
Yeah, and
Hi.
you. And you've just made us international. So if you can just get, like your partner to listen to this, we can say we've got a global audience. It'll be great. You've just upped our game there.
I'll get everyone in the village to listen to it.
Oh, nice. That's really good.
Brilliant.
Actually, over in Ireland, podcasts are huge. It's a really big thing over there.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'm glad you're the expert in Ireland.
No, I'm not the expert on Ireland. I'm the expert on podcasts. No, I'm not. Actually, it's Becca. Becca told me that fact, and she'll be presenting it next week.
So, it's not just exciting because Jutika's joining us from Ireland, but also because Jutika's a very special person that I happen to have known for quite a number of years now. Jutika has 30 years of practice as a Buddhist, and she has a gift and love of storytelling and history, and she teaches and uses a practice called focusing, which I think we're going to hear a bit more about later on. That's right, isn't it?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that. I don't know anything about it, but it sounds awesome.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
great.
It's got a good name. So
Right.
whose fact is it first?
It is my fact. I am calling dibs this month, and my fact is that trees can talk and plants are listening.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Back it up.
back it up. I want to see some proof. This is kind of lots of facts and things that I've come across over and over again that just keep catching my attention. And the trees can talk part is it comes from how through their roots trees will communicate with each other using the fungi on their roots. The fungus is becoming this bigger and bigger deal in the plant world. We're realising it's more and more important. But in this specific context, they share their resources under the ground with one another. So a big tree can support the baby trees.
Wow.
They call it the wood wide web. It's a bit...
Nice.
That's botanical geekism for you there. And they can also send signals to each other when they're under attack. So they can let each other know if a particular pest is upon them.
So via this fungus?
Yeah, through these sort of signals under the ground to one another.
It's amazing because I think it's a QI fact, but the biggest living organism in the world is a fungus in America somewhere, and it's under a forest essentially, and it's huge.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah.
Was-
Backed up.
Backed up, there we go. That's fact checked.
Yeah,
just there.
fact checked.
But plants also do this. There was a study in Missouri of, I forget the type of plant it was, but they had these caterpillars that like to eat this plant, and they recorded the caterpillars munching away on the leaves.
Yeah.
And then they took this recording to another part of their massive warehouse or shed or whatever, far away from there, and they played the recording to the little plants, and the little plants responded, and they generated this, I think it was a kind of mustard oil that the caterpillars don't like. So if caterpillars were then to come along, they'd take a few nibbles and go, oh, I'm just going to leave that. But that was...
Leave that.
I'm just going to leave... Oh, you should be one of these botanical pun
Sorry,
meisters.
I'm a dad, so it's what we do.
So I find that amazing. So it wasn't that there was chemical signals carried on the wind. It was really just
Just the sound.
Just the sound. Just complete the sound. I think they even tried playing music and wind noise to them and stuff like that to see if it would generate a similar effect, but nothing did. It was very specifically these caterpillars eating the leaves of their pals.
Wow. And so it's vibrations, essentially, because that's what sound is. It's different vibrations.
Yeah.
Jenny, what happens, because I know you've got an allotment, so what happens to plants when we come along and kind of eat them? Do they sort of send out a message like...
Are they all shouting to the other ones, run for the hills?
What are we going to eat? If we go vegetarian and we go vegan, and then we have to wait for it to pass. And
I don't know, maybe we need to do it humanely by not talking about it as we walk onto the plot and just whip them out, you know.
Wow.
Or maybe they're happy. Like maybe they're happy to give their nutrients to
plants.
Their life.
No, I mean certainly fruits and stuff like that. That's kind of what they're doing, isn't it? They're kind of like,
Yeah.
come and eat me. I've got tasty fruits.
I like the ideas of these complex cognitions that fruits and vegetables and plants have.
But there was another study as well around the fact that plants can hear, because they took where was this? This was in Australia, and they took a kind of weird upside down Y-shaped device, but they had a plant at the top of it. They ran water through plastic tubes underneath, and so there was no moisture involved, but the plants would move towards the sound of the running water. So there's just more and more evidence that they are actually
that they respond to these vibrations, specific vibrations.
Yeah, specific vibrations, because these things are so incredibly important to them. Obviously, finding water is really important to
and
plants.
predators as well. Yeah,
predators,
and also
like
passing on your
hungry
nutrients.
allotmenteers.
Like you say. Passing on your nutrients is important, and we've got to the point now where we can question it and say no and do all kinds of different things by passing on our progeny, but plants obviously don't have those cognitions. They're perpetuating their species essentially. That's their goal.
But the thing about all of this stuff was that I thought, why does this keep intriguing me? What is it about it that I mean, as you were saying, Jutika, yeah, I've got an allotment, and I walk through the gates of this place, and any problem I had, no matter how big or overwhelming I thought anything was, I walk through the gates and I feel better.
Yeah.
So I think I like hearing these things because they kind of just back up what feels like my own experience of nature, which is to feel very connected when I go into a forest, to feel quite tranquil and in a place where good stuff is happening.
Yeah.
And there is, unsurprisingly, evidence that backs that up.
What I really love is, the trees know you're there. You know what I mean? Like,
we are part of a bigger
you're
system.
being witnessed,
Yeah.
and you're being interacted with, and we don't often take that perspective, do we? That we're being witnessed, we're being noticed by nature as much as we're noticing it and taking it in and everything.
Yeah,
it's a nice thought.
Yeah, no, and I completely agree. And I find it interesting that we do all these scientific studies to sort of back up stuff that we already kind of know. It is lovely. It's really lovely.
So, shall I get into my fact?
Yeah.
Or has somebody got anything to add to Jenny's?
No, mine is complete.
My fact today is, does mental health diagnosis make you more creative? So, if you're a creative, are you more likely to have anxiety, depression, schizophrenia, all these different things? Or if you have mental health issues such as anxiety, depression, are you more likely to be more creative? This kind of stigma that's attached to mental health is very strange, because it seems to be on like a local level. Whereas when we talk about creatives or the creative profession, we almost idolise it. I mean, even on a simple thing, I remember being a kid and we were all in bands and we idolised, these rock stars, all these different rock stars that were abusing alcohol, all kinds of different things, drugs. And I didn't personally, but other people in bands were mimicking that behaviour as well. So then it's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. And so the interesting thing to me was, is this real? Is this an actual... Because this is what these scientific studies are for. I suppose it goes back to what you were just saying then. Like when you walk out into nature, it just feels like you know already. Whereas this, I think, is a bit more of a kind of twisted method, in the sense that I think we kind of assume that if you're creative, you are a bit mad. And we've passed this down, but actually, is that the case? And that's what we need to look at. So I went into this. 1 in 4 people is diagnosed with a mental health problem in the UK, but these will come from a range of different backgrounds and different professions. And I think that's the thing to stress here. You should be aware of your mental health, and these studies can help for it, but there's no right or wrong answer at this point. There's studies that point both directions. And in fact, I was reading Psychology Today, just very quickly got very heated debates on both sides of the spectrum on whether creativity causes mental illness or whether creativity is a healthy process. Because there's a guy called Albert Rothenberg, who's a doctor, and he says it cannot be denied that a number of well-known creative people, primarily in the arts, have been mentally ill. For example, Vincent van Gogh, Virginia Woolf, Robert Schumann, Robert Law, Sylvia Plath, and this list has recently been made in various ways questionably large. Okay, so that we're adding to this all the time. We're looking for different people that are creative and doing really well, and we're adding to this list of people that have suffered from mental health problems.
I do wonder, sorry, I mean, just looking at that list, you think of Vincent van Gogh, I wonder how many of his contemporaries you could point to and just go, right, we still know about them, they're still amazing, and they weren't mentally ill. You know, he's one guy could. I mean, from saying about the, you know, one in 4 people now could have a diagnosis. All we need to find is 3 other contemporaries of his of similar status, and you just say, well, it immediately goes.
Well, and all the creatives that just weren't as famous. You know, was he famous because he cut his ear off, or was he famous for other reasons? So people have put a psychiatric diagnosis on eminent people, derived not from clinical sources, but from general and popular biographies revealing apparent clay feet of the creative heroes, unproven gossip and hearsay. And again, that goes back to that Albert Rothenberg. But then there's other articles that say, a little weird, prone to depression, blame your creative brain. And this is another Psychology Today article by another doctor, Susan Bailey, and she says creative people have characteristics that make them more vulnerable. A highly original person may seem odd and strange to others.
Yeah, because there's sensitivity, isn't there? And they say like something like 10 or 15% of the population have more sensitivity, and that's necessary for us as a tribe. You know, that would be, I suppose, the priestesses or something long ago, I don't know. Yeah. But now they'd be more like our artists or whatever. You know, therapists, you need a huge amount of empathy and sensitivity.
Yeah, and I know in America it's become a little bit of a bigger thing in the last couple of years, but in America they call that HSP, a highly sensitive person. And there's different traits of that. So some people within that can be quite closed off, and some people can be quite extrovert. To be honest, I'd tick quite a lot of those boxes. And there's a couple of weird boxes that they have, like doesn't like horror films, a very strong sense of right and wrong, and if people are lying to them and things like that. And I'm ticking boxes left, right, and centre on this thing. But it is just, you're right, it's diversity. When it comes back to it, it's neurodiversity. It is about people taking different mantle and being good at different things so that we survive as a species.
And it's a bit hard to live in the world, I think, if you are very sensitive. You don't have a robustness, maybe, that maybe somebody else would. Possibly
so. Or if you're creative, maybe you have a way to facilitate that. Maybe you have an outlet for that. Exactly. And that's where this interest comes in. Because if we talk, I mean, even just in fiction, you talk about Dr. Frankenstein, Phantom of the Opera, you know, Willy Wonka. These are geniuses that are mad. You know, so we perpetuate this throughout our culture. So anyway, this brings me on to a study. And basically, I first found out about this study on Thunk Video, THUNQ. And they're very intelligent kind of videos on YouTube. I definitely go out and have a look at these. There's loads of them. Some of them are a bit geeky, but they're great.
I watched it today, Ben, in preparation.
Good, thanks. Did you like it? He's good, isn't he? He knows his stuff.
It.
Yeah, he's very intelligent. But interestingly, I saw it in there first, and then it was picked up by the NHS as well, and it was picked up by the BBC. So this is a study that's been quite widely reported, and it's a study called the Mental Illness, Suicide and Creativity 40-Year Perspective Total Population Study. Okay, so this was a study carried out by researchers at the Karolinska Institute and Gothenburg University, or Göteborg, which is how you're supposed to say it in Swedish, but probably really badly, and Uppsala University in Sweden. Göteborg. I'm going to keep just saying that. It's fun to say. It was funded by a number of Swedish institutions, including the Swedish Medical Research Council, the Swedish Psychiatry Foundation, and was published in a peer-reviewed journal of psychiatric research. So this is a huge study, okay? This study looked at over 1 million patients diagnosed with specific psychiatric disorders, and almost half of those had suffered with depression. Okay, so it looked at schizophrenia, depression, anxiety disorders, alcohol abuse, drug abuse, autism, ADHD, anorexia nervosa. And it was to compare people with psychiatric diagnosis with their relatives, although their relatives were non-diagnosed at this point. So it was just them saying, my dad had anxiety, or my dad had this, or my sister has this. And they were matched with a group without any psychiatric diagnosis. Okay, so what you'd expect from culture is that if you were more creative, then you would suffer more mental health issues. And that's not the case at all. So they have these graphs called odds ratios. And if you look at them on this research paper, everything, with the exception of writing, shows actually the opposite is true. As a specific group, writers were twice as likely to suffer from schizophrenia and bipolar disorder as the controls. They were also
they were different from other creative people.
They were also more likely to suffer from depression, anxiety, or substance abuse, and to commit suicide. Yeah. So, I mean, some of those people talked about
So maybe don't sign your kid up for creative writing at school then.
Oh, I think it's
Get them in with the painting and the pottery instead.
Well, that's that interesting thing. Is it anxiety creating this, or is it creativity creating it? That's that interest. So are writers unable to find work because they can't work a 9-to-5 job because they're struggling with things, and then decide to be a writer, look for something that is flexible, that gives them time? Are they also people that kind of sit back from society with the kind of atypical behaviour and write about it? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Is the profession of writer something that people put when they can't think of anything else to put? There's lots of different reasons that it could be.
What have you done this week? I've been working on my novel.
Well, that's it. And that's an old kind of unemployed thing if you're kind of a bit of a hipster, I suppose.
It sounds like, you know, if it's a skewed balance of all this creative set of people, most of which are doing really, really well mental health wise, and then this one group, it's as if they've all kind of migrated into that group. That's like the one creative outlet that allows for that. I don't know.
Possibly.
Well, I mean, I have been thinking about this all day because, you know, I thought it was interesting, and I thought, well, what is it, you know? And I did think, well, you need space to be creative, don't you? You need time out from everything. You can't be in the middle of everything all the time, especially if it's a bit reflective.
Yeah.
But then, which is fine if you're being creative, but if you're not being creative, then you're just a bit alienated. You know, you're a bit out of things, and it's not a great creative place. It's a lonely place or a, you know, upsetting place to be. But to be a writer, you do need to take yourself out and away. So
we've all three of us probably talked about creativity in a different way. And so how do you judge creativity? So, I mean, some of the jobs that they looked at within this 40-year study were scientists and things like that. So people that actually have to think quite creatively. And that's the thing we forget. When we say creative, we think somebody who paints. But actually, creativity is important in lots of different professions.
Funnily enough, I've started writing recently, so I don't know what that means. What's going to happen?
We'll keep an eye on you.
Watch out.
It means we'll keep an eye on you.
It's partly because we live so isolated in the countryside, and I've got so much time on my hands that you do reflect more, and then you need to give expression to it. You know, it just feels quite natural.
Yeah.
That you'd want to do something with that rather than just sit here.
Yeah.
You know, thinking your thoughts. They've got to go somewhere. So there we go.
No, it makes sense. And that's kind of that creativity is an atypical mental process. So what they're saying is that creative people think slightly differently, so they can be judged in a lot of ways. But also they talk about this in this study. They talk about this inverted U relationship. So if you saw it on a graph, it would be kind of it would go really high up and then really back down. That's the relationship between creative ability and mental illness severity, meaning that it might be useful to a point, but then up until that point you can be very creative and it can be useful, but then all of a sudden you're suffering and the severity of depression or anxiety overtake that. So back to this Albert Rothenberg, he said, when a creative person is mentally ill, creative production must be carried out during the periods of low symptom activity and anxiety. And if you think about all these creatives that have kind of artists that have died young, what are we missing? You know, what would they have created as they got older? We don't know if their best works would have been later on when they were maybe more
in that
experienced
video that you shared with us, which was really good. There was something there saying about, you know, some people holding on to that diagnosis and not seeking help because they think if they get help for their mental illness, then the creativity will go. Yeah. And
kind of Samson and Delilah type.
Well, it's interesting because I lived in Switzerland for a time, for about a year, many years ago, and the place where I lived was a community of various different people, but there were some people who'd spent time in a clinic for mental health, and this was their way of moving back out and back into work or back into education or whatever they're doing. So this was a really quite special place, and it was based a lot around living in nature and art. And one chap there, just an incredible sculptor. His work was amazing, and I remember him talking about the medication that he was on, and he was really quite keen to get off it, as I think anybody, even if you're not creative, would want to get off this stuff because it has side effects, so it's completely understandable. But for him, he said it was like putting on a helmet, and it meant that his thoughts couldn't go out into the world, and that constrained his thinking. So it was another reason that he just wanted to get off that medication just that bit faster. And he was very much on the route to recovery.
Well, yeah, I mean, just using the helmet metaphor, like if you, the helmet is a safety guard for his head, essentially. You know, you use it, but it is also limiting. You don't want to wear it all the time. You don't. There are people that go out on motorbikes and things like that without helmets. Do you know what I mean? Because they like the wind through their hair, and it's the same with kind of life experiences. Some people just want to experience it all, and that takes a certain amount of courage, I suppose. So right, should we get on to our next fact? And that would be Jutika's fact.
The best and final.
I'm fact ready. So my fact is the body holds our experience and knows the way forward. Mm-hmm. Which sounds like a given, really. I'll give you the background to it. So Gene Gendlin, he developed focusing in the 1970s in Chicago, and he worked with Carl Rogers.
Oh, right.
And he was really interested to know why some people changed in therapy a lot and others didn't seem to get much benefit from therapy. Like, what was the common factor? Mm-hmm. So he recorded like hundreds of different therapy sessions, thinking maybe it was a therapist or the kind of therapy. And the common factor when people changed was they stopped talking and they sort of went inside and they sort of fumbled around to try and find what they were trying to say. So they would sort of pause and go, it's kind of like this, or maybe, you know, they sort of fumbled, and then whatever they said came sort of from the body rather than from the head. So that sense of you can go inside and find that edge between what's known and what's unknown, and that sort of sitting on that edge, you know, in a therapeutic context or a sort of space where it feels safe. The body kind of tells you more than you know already, and also can tell you how to move forward. So that happens naturally. But he realized you could teach it to people as well. Wow. So he came up with this idea, focusing. So focusing, it's not a great name for what it is because it sounds quite heady, but he got it from more like, you know, when you're a photographer and you're focusing the image, that it's blurry at first, it's vague, and as you spend time in it, it gets clearer. And I suppose for a lot of us, we're uncomfortable with what's fuzzy or vague. You know, we feel like we need to know. He taught it's a rich practice to stay in that fuzzy, vague body. So
yeah, that's very much in line with what we do, I think. I mean, Carl Rogers' person-centered approach. But everybody that comes through my door, when we're talking to them in the initial conversation, we say, look, you have the skills and the expertise to deal with whatever you come to me for. It's about finding the solutions. And so that moment that you're talking about there is the penny drop moment. That moment is that sparkling moment where they kind of and it is almost it's almost a reaction rather than sometimes it's not a conscious thought. Sometimes they don't have to put A, B and C together to come out with it. They just go, I mean, I've had people say, I'm going to go and do this with such and such, and then go, what? Why would I say that? And it's come completely out of the blue. And it's a really strange thing that they're doing, you know, like a pastime that they would never have done before and didn't really feel like them. But maybe they did it when they were a kid, or maybe they just know that the other person would really like it. And these things have come for them, seem to have come out of nowhere. And it's when you have those moments that all of a sudden they go, and the shoulders drop a little bit.
But that kind of that sense as well of that kind of fumbling around. Yeah, I think a lot of that comes from when the person in front of you is really not thinking, that's hard, but kind of they're sitting with it for a moment. It's not kind of you ask a question, they answer, they ask, when there has to be a moment of kind of when they kind of go inside for a moment and the silence in the room, you know the work is being done. You know something's really happening then. And
if you're in a safe space, which a therapist hopefully should, a modern therapist anyway, should create for you, that's where you go into that parasympathetic nervous system. That's where you feel safe. And if you feel safe enough to be in that blurred, that place where maybe you're usually a little bit uncomfortable, that's where you can come up. I know there's loads of these online courses that you can do for Future Learn, and there's an American one as well, I can't remember what it's called at the moment, but they do universities put on courses, and one of them was an American university that I did a few years ago. Learning to Learn, it was called, and they talk about these chunks of information, how we store chunks of information. So if you're learning to drive at first, you've got lots of different things that you have to think about, but eventually that becomes a chunk, and you kind of just pull at it when you need it. Okay, so as we grow up, we're getting these chunks of information in lots of different places, and actually when we relax, we can start putting these chunks of information together. We can actually go without too much, though, without, we focus on a problem, and then we go away, and these chunks of information in the brain kind of link up, these synapses fire and go,
even in your dreams, you can get the answers. Like there's that chemist whose name I've forgotten, who dreamt of the snake eating his tail. That
everlasting
ring.
Yeah. You can analyse this one. I stood in some dog muck. That was my dream. Don't know what that means. Can I analyse that?
No, but interesting. I mean, I do focusing with dreams, and that's really interesting because the dream is like a body-given image. And when you sit with it in that kind of quiet space, so your mind will be working overtime to try and figure it out rationally. And you can acknowledge that, like, there goes my mind. It's coming up with all these reasons why Ben stood in dog shit. But if you kind of go into the felt sense of it, that's where you get the gold in a way.
Yeah.
So,
that's quite often somebody will say, I mean, obviously I don't work in dreams, but every now and again somebody will say something about a dream, and I'll go, you know what it means, though, don't you? And they'll go, yeah. I know why I had that dream. I know what it is. And we talk about dreams in the sense that they are making sense of the day. They're helping you deal with stress and anxiety. They're emptying your stress bucket. And the way that it does that is by you forming a conclusion, by you getting what's useful out of it and getting rid of the rest. But obviously, they can be weird as well.
But there is something in focusing as well, isn't there, about not being very analytical about what comes up. I mean, maybe that's just my limited experience of it, but I liked that of it. Yeah.
Something about honouring the mystery. But, I mean, over time, things do usually reveal their meaning. Like, I kept on getting this reoccurring image every year when I was on retreat up in Scotland of being on a kind of lake, and the hillside was quite flat. And then I'd go over the side of the lake into this deep ravine. And it was a real kind of rich, really green, but it was really narrow. And it just kept on coming every year. And I thought, what the hell? And then I moved back to Ireland, and I thought, well, that's it. That's the image. I can feel it. I've kind of fallen down. Like, I've gone from a very broad life to a very narrow, surrounded by trees, very rural, very quiet. So there's a lot of richness in it, but it's very different from that open, broad landscape. But until it actually happened in my life, I didn't really know what the image was about. But I had to kind of just honour it, and sort of sit with it and kind of go.
It's kind of, again, back to mindfulness a little bit.
Well, no, it makes
where you play with it. You don't, it's not about attacking it, or if your mind drifts, you don't go, right, go back. You kind of let it go back naturally.
Yeah,
but it makes
you live with it. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it makes me think about, this is a bit random, but, sort of harmonic frequencies, like if you play one string on a stringed instrument, or sounds and it can make it vibrate.
She's brought it back to sounds, just so we notice.
Yeah, just, my all-important fact. but no, don't come and bear with me with this, because it's like, I've thought this before about this idea of something sort of resonates in you, and then you find that thing in the world, and it makes that frequency vibrate. And I think the thing about focusing, maybe you haven't yet found the thing that you're going to put that up against and it's going to vibrate, but you have to have at least heard it in the first place. Because maybe if you hadn't been doing that focusing practice and that imagery had come to you, that when you went to the right place where you should be, that thing might have vibrated and you couldn't hear it because you hadn't been listening for it. So maybe all that time, it's a bit like listening out in space. We're listening all the time, just to see what comes. And who knows when we're going to be able to match that to something.
Well, and that comes back to having the innate skills, because, well, you can already hear it, but you need to listen. It's already there making a sound, or vibrating, or however you want to do it. Generally, people have the skills at some point. They have learnt them to deal with most things that crop up. But it's being able to sit down and go, actually, I do have this. It's there. And it's about finding that connection, I suppose I would call it. And And finding your connection with wilderness and finding your connection with each other and, you know.
Exactly.
I love how these are all linked.
Yeah, I knew they would be. I thought they're all connected. I don't know how, but I know we'll figure it out.
It's like an episode of Lost. We've done it.
So I'm wondering about, you said about the focusing and going with dreams and using focusing with dreams. So I always thought of focusing as very much being about how we feel in the here and now, but does that mean you can use it for things that have happened in the past, or how you feel about something that's going to happen in the future? You can use something, you can bring something to focusing. It's not just about what's going to be spontaneously revealed. Yeah, because what you do is you talk about it, and in the talking about it you invoke it, and then you go in and touch in with the body sense that you've invoked in the here and now about something that's happened before. So, but you go in freshly to what's here now, you know, so the talking just gets it going, and then the sensing into what's here now is
it's still quite present.
Yeah, very. Yeah. So I suppose you could decide, look, I'm going to focus on what job I should do next. But then you talk about it, and then you sit down. You have to be kind of open to what comes, because it might be about the job, but it might be about something else. But usually there is a connection, you know. Yeah. So with the dreams, you describe the dream maybe for like 3 minutes and then go right into the body. Huh. But you can get a few like invitations that help bring out the meaning of the dream a bit more. Like what in the dream felt good or not good in Ben's dream. Okay.
What really felt
I might have liked it. You got
maybe it felt really good.
Yeah, maybe I liked it.
With that.
It was really cold out, and that was a bit warm. I did not like it. I remember being very upset, and I believe it was an astroturf, so I couldn't even wipe my foot properly. So
that's kind of interesting as well, isn't it? AstroTurf. Yeah. Not grass.
Yeah. I'm scared of standing on real grass now because it gets upset. So thanks to Jutika Healy for joining us today. We hope you've enjoyed our facts and look forward to the next episode. If you'd like to follow us on social media, you can follow me on Twitter at GMHip, and you can connect with Jeni through her website, Jeni with an I, not from the block, nelson.co.uk. That's Jeni with an I, nelson.co.uk. And just to go on her website, jas-lab.com. And you'll also find some art by Sahaja, her husband, on there as well. And it's probably worth mentioning focusing.org, who have been very helpful coming up with your facts and giving lots of helpful information. And yeah, they sound really interesting. I'm definitely going to have a look at those guys. So thank you very much, guys, for getting involved. And if you did enjoy the podcast or have any comments, facts for us, you'd like to tell us what we've got wrong, that's fine as well. In fact, it's really helpful to us. We love that. You can follow us on Instagram at A Spoonful of Theory, on Twitter at A Spoonful_, and that's full as in a full spoon.
A full spoon of things.
A full spoon. Or by using the hashtag A Spoonful. That's hashtag A Spoonful. If you've listened to our previous episodes, you'll know why that's funny. So you can go back to episodes 1, 2 and 3 and you'll enjoy those. Don't forget to give us a review on iTunes as well. So that's have a listen, give us a review and share it out with your friends. Anything else, Jeni?
Oh, yes. Thanks for that prompt there, Ben. Yeah, don't forget our website, aspoonful.co.uk.
Oh, very useful. Yeah. Thank you very much for that.
So thanks very much, Jutika.
Yeah, thanks, Jutika. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you all next month. Thank you. Bye.